Let's see. Is it rolling? I am resident of Collinwood for YouTube, Joel Sage. That is my buddy Alan Gallant. We're here to do Dark Shadows episode 795. This episode is narrated by the lovely Laura Parker, written by Gordon Russell, directed by Leila Swift. It's recorded July 4th, 1969. It's broadcast July 11th, 1969. And I love the one thing I love about this episode outside of Quentin not being a werewolf. Unfortunately, we don't get to see Alex Stevens in a tuxedo anymore.
No,
because Quentin's suit is ripped. This episode pays tribute to Pitt and the Pendulum.
yes, it does, very much so.
Yeah. What did you think of the opening here, Alan?
Well, I mean, it's sort of a continuation, obviously, of it's a good example of that sort of melodramatic cliffhanger effect, and we go from the cliffhanger of the previous episode, which we just went over not too long ago, and now here we are trying to figure out as an audience, okay, what's going to happen now, kind of thing. So it's almost like a cliffhanger within a cliffhanger. It's well done, I think, and given the pendulum effect is what it is for daytime television, it's still indicative of threat. So it still works, for me anyway, and especially works for me as a kid. I mean, that was a big deal.
I gotta say, the gypsies hit a new level of deceit and distrust here.
Forget about it. Well, I mean, we've got an injection of new gypsy, in the last episode. So this continues into this episode. You get Julianka, who is incredibly deceptive, and her real interest is just getting the hand, and she'll say anything to get it at this point. So and it's I mean, obviously Barnabas puts a stop to that relatively quickly with his arcane powers, and hypnotizes her. It's sort of it's almost a seduction scene of sorts, the way the vampire does his thing, but she kind of falls under his spell, and basically that issue is taken care of, and she's now going to be an ally, potentially, and hopefully, that's going to make things work out at this point.
Yeah. Jonathan Fritz Barnabas here does everything in his power to he doesn't want to do that, and which keeps up the sympathetic vampire thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, I'll pay you, I'll give you money. She goes, I don't want money. And I love how she pulls the knife. Every time I watch this episode, which I know it doesn't happen, I keep waiting for Jonathan Fritz Barnabas to go ahead, do it, stab me, see what happens.
Yeah, she does not realize, and you'd think she would, being somebody that's very familiar with the supernatural, that she would have sensed that he was a vampire, and apparently she doesn't until he makes his powers evident to her. So that's kind of interesting.
Well, here's the thing: everybody is so hyper focused on the hand. I'm going to give Julianka a pass here.
Oh.
Because
you kind of have. I mean, I'm not.
No, I know.
And I mean, it is. It's like button who's got the button with the hand, basically, because it's Angelique has it, and Barnabas wants it, and Julianka wants it, but Angelique doesn't want to give it to, but maybe she will, and maybe she won't, and then Aristide comes, because they've got Quentin. Thanks to him being, grogged out as the werewolf and tied up, they've basically got him as as a bargaining chip here to try to get the hand back to Aristide and therefore Victor Fenn-Gibbon, aka Petofi.
Yeah.
So there's a lot going on with that hand.
And I like too the fact that I feel like the hand of Petofi feels like the ecstasy of gold song that Ennio Morricone wrote, because everybody's like how everybody's after gold in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Well, everybody's been after this hand. Angelique has it, then she lets it go. She gives it to Barnabas. She goes, "Okay, I'll give you the hand. One condition, stay out of my business with Quentin." And he's like, "Okay, all right,
Yeah.
that's the deal, fine." And so he does, and he doesn't realize Julianka is here to take the head by force. And she pulls that knife, and he leaves, and she goes, "Goodbye, Mr. Barber." He goes, "Oh no, this isn't goodbye. You haven't said the last to me."
No. And then the whole shtick with Aristide and Barnabas, and Aristide not wanting to tell him where Quentin is because he figures he can't get there anyway, not in time. Of course, he changes into a bat and he's there in a matter of seconds. But the interesting thing about this whole segment here is what a freebie character Dan Curtis has in the hand of Count Petofi.
Oh yeah,
because the hand is really, is such a catalyst. It's such a rich thing to write around, to write all these conflicts and so on. I ran across this guy a while back on one of the Dark Shadows Facebook pages. His name is, I should say, Randy Ogoff. I think I'm pronouncing it correctly. And he actually, as a teenager, knew Vinny Loscalzo, the makeup guy, on Dark Shadows, and he used to come into the studio and help him out when he needed help every once in a while. And one of the things that he helped him with was the hand, creating the hand. So I'd like to read you a passage that he wrote on Facebook. This was, I don't know, a couple years ago, I guess. But he said the hand was a mannequin's hand. So they just used it like a store mannequin's hand. We, meaning he and Vinny Loscalzo, glued red and blue wool onto it to mimic veins. And after that, a clear rubber glove was placed over it. And if you look closely at the hand, you can sort of see the ragged edges of the glove over the wrist. And makeup applied to it to give it a flesh tone. We ripped the glove at the edge to look like shredded skin. At the wrist, red sponges and carved balsa wood were placed to look like bones, and which you see sticking out of the prop. The finishing touches were to glue fake fingernails onto the hand, and lastly, they stuck a ring on it. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting. And it's a really vivid element, obviously, not only for the writing of it, but the actual appearance of it. And I mean, they didn't waste any opportunity to use it as some kind of magical influence over people, which was great because it added a lot of drama to the show. And this is one of the episodes where you don't see it; it's in the box, but its presence is felt the whole scene, of each scene, because of what's going on and what the stakes are. On one hand, it's going to save Quentin. On the other hand, Aristide trying to get it might get Quentin killed. It's just it's everything. It has a duality about it. It's good and evil. Well, it's potential.
I think we see the hand for like 10 seconds. She's like,
yeah, it's mostly in the box.
Yeah, it's mostly
she pulls it out. At one point, Angelique, I think, pops it out of there, but it's mostly in that gorgeous box, which I keep looking for a replica of. Love to have one of those.
Julianka, I think, asks if the box is empty. And Barney's like, see, it's in there.
Yeah.
It's like,
It's like, there it is, a
Well, heck,
mannequin's hand with a
gypsies,
rubber glove over it.
gypsies know, hey, we can't trust anybody because we know how to be, distrustworthy ourselves. So.
Well, yeah.
Oh, but Barnabas does stick to his word in this. It's just Julianka betrays him.
Yes.
I do got to give a lot of credit to Laura Parker's Angelique here. She's sticking to her gun. She goes, "No, I just want to be with Quentin. I
Yeah.
just want to be with Quentin."
Yeah. Yeah, and so that's what cuts the initial deal. So that Barnabas says, "Oh well, all right then," because obviously the ultimate goal is to save the generations to come. Into the future. So, and then that's the other thing that's hanging over, because that hangs over the entirety of 1897. A lot of times you forget about it, and then they remind you of it. And, oh yeah, that's right. That's how he got here in the first place, because it's such a long storyline. It goes on, for several hundred episodes, and it's like 9 months and some days. So it's good to be reminded of why he's there in the first place every once in a while.
Yeah, it's really interesting because Barnabas he's like concerned at first. He goes, "Look, I just don't want anything you do with Quentin to affect the future of what's going to happen. I need that hand." And she goes, "Look, I just want to be with him. Make this deal with me. I'll give you the hand." And they make this deal. They make this pact. Julian portrays him. I would really love Aristide here explaining to David Selby about what happened with the werewolf changing his face, going back to normal. He goes, "You're a lucky man."
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Hopefully you're lucky.
Did you catch the part where Mike Stroka loses his lines and has to look quickly over at the teleprompter just before he pulls the knife out and forces him onto the table? He says, "Well, in this next part, I anticipate some difficulty, Mr. Collins." And it's like, okay, Mike, no problem.
It happens. It happens.
It totally happens. It's not the first or the last time, but it's for me. As an actor, I sympathize with that, and it's sometimes it's cool to watch it, but at the same time, you got to sympathize with these guys, because it's like you don't want that to happen as an actor. It just shoots the adrenaline right through you when that happens.
Here's one for you. When you think about House of Dark Shadows, like the first Dark Shadows movie, and the luxury they had to memorize their line.
Yeah, they only had to memorize like a scene at a time, and then they would shoot maybe a couple scenes a day. So you might be in a couple scenes a day. There it goes. But you're not going to be memorizing like, pages and pages like these guys had to do on a daily basis. If they were in, oh, you're driving this scene, well, that means you've got 6 pages of dialogue to memorize, and maybe a couple more in the later scene. It's a lot.
I mean, this is basically, though Dark Shadows on TV, in many ways, it's like a stage production in every way.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of used to refer to it as putting on a little play every day.
Yeah,
and it's very much like that, because you start and you don't stop, because it's too expensive to edit it the way that 10 years later they would edit it. As a matter of course, you could stop it if you messed up a scene and reshoot it, but they couldn't really do that economically in the 60s, so they didn't. They just rehearsed it several times, ran it down on the floor with and without costumes, and then taped it. And some days they didn't even have that much rehearsal down on the set, because there were special effects to rehearse, which must have been crazy making for the actors some days, because not much rehearsal on your feet. Just kind of have to go with it.
What's your favorite costume design from 1897?
Oh my God. That is really, I really enjoyed. I was enamored of the costume piece first, whether the whole costume of the Inverness that Barnabas wore that had the shearling collar instead of the regular flat wool collar. I thought that was really kind of cool. Whoever thought of that to make it a little different, a little more of a period. That was cool. And probably either his or Quentin's ensemble I really liked as a male child. I looked at those and thought, hey, that would be cool to wear, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I really love the stuff they do with David Hennessy when he's competent and they make him wear the gloves.
Oh yeah, that's
the little things like that are just
Yeah.
killer on this show.
It is. It is.
And my favorite thing, obviously, look, anytime you can see a werewolf in a suit, I'm there.
Yeah, I mean, button-up collar and the whole 9 yards, big, fur coming out all over the place.
I didn't get to ask you this because you weren't in on our first video, but what did you think of the look of Victor Ben Gibbon / Count Potemkin in the first episode?
I would really like to know whose idea that was, whether or not Thayer David had some input